And the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. I love my country.
Some discoveries don't just alter a moment, they transform a life forever. For Prince Harry, this was one of those rare, life-altering moments. No cameras, no royal advisors, just a quiet room, heavy with memory, untouched by protocol. In a hidden corner of Frogmore Cottage stood a desk that had once belonged to his mother. She had been taken from the world far too soon. What began as a routine effort to tidy up quickly became something extraordinary. A doorway into the past, a sealed envelope waiting to be found. His name was written in Diana's unmistakable hand. No instructions, no pomp, just her love captured in ink, timeless and personal. For years, Harry had scoured headlines, memories, and the causes she championed, searching for fragments of her. But nothing ever reached him the way this moment did. When he finally opened that envelope, there were no directions for a prince, no palace rules, no expectations, only comfort for a son, words meant for him alone. This was Diana, unfiltered and completely unguarded, leaving behind a final act of love that no one else would ever know. The revelation shook him, not with grief, but with an unexpected, almost overwhelming healing. As he read the words she had left behind, tears rolled down his cheeks, not because he missed her more, but because in that instant she had never felt closer. The hidden compartment in Diana's writing desk held its secret for decades. It all began on an ordinary morning at Frogmore Cottage, the kind of morning where sunlight streamed in golden beams through the old windows, dust motes dancing, and a profound silence filled every corner. Harry had intended to spend the day simply going through old storage boxes, untouched since the family's move from Kensington, remnants of a life intertwined with palaces, protocol, and expectation. There had been no plan to discover anything monumental. It was meant to be practical work, but tucked along the far wall of the guest room, a secret waited. Partially concealed behind a bookshelf stood the desk. Not just any desk, but his mother's. It had been quietly passed down to him years ago, yet he had never truly explored it. The wood, faded yet elegant, felt familiar in a way that made him pause, tracing the edges of the drawers. Something shifted deep inside. He opened the top compartment, leafing through stationery, old pens, and a faded paperweight, then noticed something unusual beneath the velvet lining. At first glance it was invisible, but a corner curled in a subtle, inviting way. Gently, he lifted it, and there it was, a hidden panel, and behind it, an envelope. His heart stopped. The paper was yellowed at the edges, but the handwriting was clear. His name, Harry, scrawled in a script he would have recognized anywhere. Diana's handwriting, perfectly familiar, whispered across the years. For a long moment, he simply held it, barely breathing. The room's quiet became sacred. Time itself seemed to pause to witness the moment. No security, no advisors, no flashbulbs, just sunlight, and the last unopened letter from his mother. He lowered himself slowly into a chair, hesitant to break the seal. Part of him felt this was too fragile to touch. Another part of him couldn't wait another second. He turned the envelope over. No date, no official marks, just her name in the return corner. D. Spencer. He pressed it to his lips briefly, then set it gently in his lap. Not yet. He needed to be ready. Instead, he returned it carefully to the drawer, as if the light itself might harm it. He closed the desk and stepped away, but nothing about the room remained the same. The air had shifted. A weight had arrived. A gift beyond expectation. What Diana had left behind was more than a letter. It was a doorway, and once opened, nothing in Harry's world would remain untouched. For 3 days, the letter remained untouched. Each morning, he would lift it slightly from the drawer, hold it in his hands, and replace it. The weight of it, so light, yet unbearably full, kept him frozen. He wasn't afraid of the words themselves. He was afraid of the storm they might awaken. The voice of a mother long gone, captured in ink. He needed quiet, clarity, and for 3 days, he didn't have either. Then came a rainy afternoon that changed everything. Meghan had taken the children for a walk between showers, and Frogmore was unusually still. Without thought, Harry walked to the desk, pulled out the envelope, and sat on the window seat. Outside, the garden was soaked in grey, the sky heavy and low. His fingers trembled as he cracked the seal. The paper inside was soft, slightly aged, yet in that instant, it was alive. He felt her, not the draught of air, not a sound, but Diana, present as if waiting for him to truly listen. The letter began, "Simply my dearest Harry, no titles, no formalities, only love. If you are reading this, perhaps the world has already tried to shape you into something. I always feared a symbol, not a soul." His eyes stung as he absorbed every line. She spoke of her hopes, her fears, and the courage she prayed he would carry through life. She wrote like someone who knew her time was limited, yet whose love was eternal. "You've always had a wild heart," she said. "Not reckless, but brave. I see it in your eyes. I saw it when you were just a boy chasing truth, even when it was hard." Harry blinked through tears. She had stepped out of time just to speak to him. No mention of palace politics, scandal, or bitterness, only a mother protecting the softness in her son's heart. "If you feel misunderstood, it's because you were never meant to fit inside their boxes. Don't let the crown define you. Let compassion guide you." He pressed the letter to his chest and leaned against the window. Outside, the rain eased, but inside, something opened. Not pain, not regret, just a flood of everything he had held back. Grief, longing, unanswered questions since age 12. For the first time, some part of him felt seen. She hadn't left only memories. She had left permission to be himself, to feel, to heal. In that silence, Harry let himself cry without apology. "You were always my wild one." The letter didn't stop there. Diana's words continued, each sentence unfolding like a conversation paused for decades. He read it again the next morning, and again the day after, but it was one paragraph in the middle that he returned to over and over, circling it in his mind like a melody he couldn't forget. "You were always my wild one." She had written to the boy who danced to his own rhythm. No one else had heard. "I used to watch you in the garden talking to butterflies, running from shadows, laughing at the sky. You had magic in your bones, Harry, and even then I knew you wouldn't stay hidden for long." He read those words again and again, as if the ink itself held warmth. No one had ever described him like that. Not the press, not the palace, not even passing acquaintances. They called him spare, rebel, troublemaker. But his mother saw wonder, and that changed everything. Memories surged back, running barefoot through palace halls, curls bouncing, Diana scooping him up, whispering, "You're my sunshine boy." Chaos celebrated, never tamed. Forgotten joy returned. The letter didn't correct him. It reminded him who he had been before the world demanded otherwise. Sitting there, the letter in his lap, sunlight finally breaking through grey Windsor skies, he whispered, "You were always my wild one." Waves of recognition washed over him, not for approval, but because he had carried the weight of misunderstanding for years. Her letter didn't erase pain. It honoured it, validated it, and made him feel seen long before the world ever formed an opinion. Later, barefoot in the garden, the cool grass beneath his feet, he felt free. He didn't need a stage, a title, or justification, just the memory of her hands brushing back his hair, and the truth of her words echoing in his heart, stronger than ever. She had always known, the boy who never quite fit, the one who asked too many questions, laughed too loud, and refused to bend to the world's rules. That was the boy she loved fiercest. And now, years later, that same boy, grown into a man weighed down by headlines, heartbreak and expectation, was beginning to remember himself too. Diana didn't just leave a letter, she left a mirror, reflecting everything he had been and everything he could still be. For the first time in years, Harry started seeing his own reflection. A necklace, something he had never noticed her wear. The letter had begun a quiet healing, but it wasn't the only treasure Diana had left. On the fourth day, curiosity drew him back to the desk. Not for the letter, but for something more. He lifted the false panel again, fingers tracing its edges, half expecting nothing. But tucked in the back corner, almost invisible beneath the felt lining, lay a small velvet pouch, tied with a ribbon worn soft by time. He opened it slowly. Inside was a simple gold chain, delicate yet substantial, and dangling from it, a pendant shaped like a crescent moon, engraved with a single word on the back. Always. Harry froze. He had never seen this piece before. Not in photos, not in public displays, not among the boxes passed down after her death. This was private, hidden, intended only for him. Holding it felt heavier than metal, like a fragment of love preserved in quiet secrecy. As he held it to the light, memories flashed. He was 6 or 7, storm outside shaking the palace walls, crawling into Diana's bed. She drew him under the covers and whispered stories of the moon, how it watched over children when mothers couldn't. "If I'm ever not here, just look at the moon," she had said. "It'll be our secret. I'll always be watching you." He hadn't remembered that night until now, but the pendant unlocked it instantly. That promise, that secret, now tangible in his palm. Diana had known he would need it. Harry placed the necklace around his neck, hidden beneath his shirt. It wasn't for display, not for the world. It was a vow between mother and son, a private talisman. Later that afternoon, Megan found him in the nursery, quiet, staring out the window. Toys lay scattered, untouched. She didn't speak at first, just sat beside him. He slid the pendant from beneath his shirt into her hand. Her eyes softened as she turned it over, reading the single word. She didn't ask where it came from. She didn't need to. Silence said everything. That night, Harry placed the letter inside the velvet pouch, then into a wooden box by his bedside. Not for safekeeping, but to keep her close. Diana's voice, memory, touch, all interwoven in ink and gold. She had never left him empty. She had prepared him, tenderly. And now, years later, he could feel her again, not as memory, but as presence. The house was quiet, children asleep, rain falling in steady, soft waves. Harry stood at the kitchen sink, pendant against his chest, staring at the garden. The letter rested in the box by his bed, but it was the weight of her words that clung to him. Every line resonated with truth he hadn't heard in years. The ache hadn't faded, it had shifted shape, reshaping him quietly. Megan entered the room softly. He didn't need to speak. She had seen the change. Later, they sat on the floor by the fireplace. No wine, no television, just presence. Harry handed her the letter, sacred in his hands, knowing it belonged to him, but also to her, the woman who had walked every storm beside him. She read it slowly, line by line, fingers trembling ever so slightly. When she reached the part where Diana called him her wild one, she paused. Eyes glistened, lips pressed together to steady themselves. No words needed. She folded the letter carefully, placed it back in his hand, and leaned into him. It wasn't dramatic. No speeches, no tears demanded. Just warmth, the kind that says, "I see you. I know what this costs. I'm with you." Harry didn't cry immediately. Later, after Megan went upstairs, he sat alone in the firelight, letting it come slow, deep, cleansing. These weren't tears of a prince. They were the tears of a son, a husband, a father, a man who had carried wounds the world refused to leave alone. Finally, space existed to feel it all. That night, Megan didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. She had seen his quiet, the depth of him, the way he moved differently. The shared silence, the unspoken gratitude, carried weight. Yet somehow it felt lighter now. The letter hadn't just healed Harry. It had softened the walls around their life. Diana, even in death, was still stitching pieces together, still showing up, still guiding. In the dark, Harry whispered a word, low and intimate. "Thank you." Not to the ceiling, not to the night, but to her. She had found a way to keep speaking, and finally, he had begun to listen. By morning, something had shifted. Nothing obvious, no sudden clarity, no burst of energy, just a quiet, steady pool of presence inside him. He packed a small bag, kissed Megan's forehead, and told her he needed to go somewhere. She didn't ask. She just nodded, understanding that some things are felt, not explained. Hours later, Harry stood at Althorp, the Spencer estate, where his mother lay beneath the trees across the still lake. He hadn't returned like this for years. Not alone, not carrying her words close to his chest. The grounds were damp, soft underfoot. The wind stirred slowly through the trees, circling as if attentive to him. Everything felt suspended. Time paused. He walked toward the island that held more than a grave. It held memory, presence, and peace. He had never fully allowed himself to feel it before. At the water's edge, he stopped. Silent, still. The pendant around his neck caught the light and the wind as if it understood the place. The sky was grey, the lake nearly motionless. Then, without warning, the air shifted. Not storm, not breeze, just stillness, a hush settling over the world. It was a silence that didn't feel empty. It was full, like someone unseen was watching, waiting. He took a deep breath, eyes closed. In that moment, he didn't see headlines, pain, or years of separation. He saw her, not the icon, not the tragedy, but his mother, laughing beside him, fingers running through his hair, telling him he was enough. The words that came from him weren't planned. They sprang from the 12-year-old he had carried inside all along. Thank you for the letter, for the necklace, for never letting go. His voice cracked. Tears burned his eyes. Yet, he smiled. I'm okay. He didn't think he would be, but he was. And he felt something he hadn't felt in years, understanding. Why did you love the way you did? Why did you break rules for us? Why do you never stop fighting to be real? A bird skimmed low over the water. Branches shifted. Harry didn't move. He didn't need signs, not answers. He came for presence. And in that stillness, he had it. She was there, in the wind, in the silence, in the space between pain and peace. Not haunting, not heavy, just there. Soft, steady, true. As he turned to leave, Harry placed a hand over his chest, fingers brushing the pendant, feeling its warmth sink deep into him. He didn't speak. He didn't whisper goodbye. Only a quiet promise. I'll carry you forward. Diana's words about William kept echoing, tender and precise. The drive back from Althorp was silent, reflective. Harry didn't speak. He didn't scroll through his phone. He didn't play music. He simply watched the world blur past the window, his hand resting lightly over the pendant. Inside, something had shifted. A storm had passed, leaving behind calm, steady ground. Yet one section of the letter continued to hum in his mind, the part about William he hadn't shared with anyone. Not yet. It was tucked carefully in the middle of the letter, gentle, understated, but piercing in clarity. I know one day you and your brother may walk different paths, Diana had written. It will hurt, but I ask you, Harry, to love him anyway. Not blindly, not by silencing yourself, but by remembering that you are both carrying burdens you never asked for. When Harry first reached that paragraph, he had stopped reading. The words were raw, sharp, almost too much to hold. He had folded the letter and walked away, but after Althorp, after the quiet at the lake, after standing with the wind moving through the trees and the grass soft beneath his boots, he felt ready to face it. She hadn't taken sides. She hadn't chosen one son over the other. Her message was precise, clear, and brimming with love. She had seen the distance before it formed. She had sensed the tension, the unspoken hurt, the invisible walls built from pride, misunderstanding, and unspoken expectation. You are more alike than you realize, she wrote. You both ache in places you've never named. Don't let the world convince you that being different means being enemies. It was not easy for him to take in. So much had passed. Years of silence, miscommunication, misunderstandings, and moments lost between brothers. Yet hearing Diana articulate it before it even happened shifted something deep in him. The ache became less a weight of failure and more a thread in a story still unfolding. A story still alive. That evening, Harry dialed William's number from the garden. He didn't expect a reply. He only needed to try. The phone rang. Once, twice, then voicemail. He paused, listening to the automated voice fill the quiet air around him. Then he spoke, slow and careful, words heavy with memory and vulnerability. Hey, it's me. I found something from Mum, a letter. She wrote about you, about us. She knew we might walk different paths, but she asked us to love each other through it. I don't know where we stand, but I wanted you to know I'm thinking of you. He hung up without waiting for a reply. Closure wasn't the goal. Honesty was. And maybe that was exactly what Diana had intended. Not to force reconciliation, but to preserve an open door. Harry realized something profound that night. His mother hadn't only left him a way to heal his own heart. She had given him something far more radical. Permission to carry the heart, not the throne, to live fully, beyond the weight of expectation, beyond the pressure of legacy. The next morning came gently, almost reverently, as if the world itself understood what Harry had been carrying. The sky over Windsor was soft, pale blue. He stepped outside before the children woke, the dew still fresh on the grass, birds calling gently in the hedges. The letter rested beside the bed, no longer hidden, no longer locked away, but close, tangible. He didn't need to read it again. Her voice was alive inside him, in memory, in thought, in the quiet spaces between breaths, and in the weight of the pendant against his chest. The closing lines of the letter, the final message, shifted everything. You were never meant to carry the crown, Harry. You were meant to carry something else. The heart, the truth, the people. That's the gift I see in you. Carry it well, carry it boldly, and never forget. You don't need a throne to change the world. Those words sank into him like water into dry ground. It wasn't affirmation alone, it was instruction, love, and a quiet mandate. She had seen him before the world did, long before he knew it himself. In those lines, he understood the restlessness, the frustration, the aching desire to do more than simply wave from balconies or follow centuries-old rules. Diana had named it, and by naming it, she had given him permission to live it, not as rebellion, but as a calling, not as escape, but as legacy. Her legacy, standing under the wide sky, the pendant warm against his chest. Harry whispered softly, "Carry the heart, not the throne. Not for the world, for her, for himself." A vow sealed not in gold or ceremony, but in quiet resolve. Inside, the house stirred. Archie's little feet padded above. Megan's voice hummed softly. Ordinary life, sacred and unassuming, resumed. Harry felt a subtle peace. Not certainty, not answers, but a calm born from remembering differently. Remembering not just loss, but love. Not absence, but legacy. The letter, the necklace, the trip to Althorp, the call to William. They were threads weaving a larger truth. Not a moment, but a turning point. Diana hadn't returned in body, but through her quiet remnants, she had returned with purpose. And Harry at last felt ready to carry it forward, not as prince, not as rebel, but as her son, her wild one, her heart alive in him. Some stories don't end, they echo. Diana's voice wasn't buried with her. It lived on in those she loved, in the subtle, silent things she left behind, in the healing she set in motion long before she was gone. For Harry, this wasn't simply discovering a letter. It was reclaiming a part of himself he hadn't realized was missing. A son, not a symbol. A man, not a mistake. A heart, not a headline. In reading her words, wearing the necklace, visiting her resting place, he didn't just remember her. He reconnected with who she had always seen in him. This was never about royalty. It was about legacy. Not written in law or title, but in love, courage, and truth. Through his steps, his voice, his fatherhood, and his life, Diana walked again. Not in shadow, but in light. Not in mourning, but in movement. The crown may never sit on Harry's head, but what he carries is heavier, fiercer, and infinitely more powerful. The heart of his mother, the fire of her truth, the love that never left. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change the world. Not a throne, not a title, just a letter, a necklace, a son willing to listen, and the courage to carry it forward. As he stood there, the pendant catching the morning light, Harry allowed himself one final thought. Life would continue. The world would keep spinning, challenges would keep coming, but he would move forward carrying not a crown, but a heart, alive, unbroken, guided by love. And in that quiet, he whispered into the wind, softly but firmly, "Thank you, Mum. Always. Thank you." If this story touched you, if it moved you, or reminded you of the quiet ways love can guide us, don't let it end here. Take a moment. Like, comment, and subscribe. Share the story, pass on the lessons, and carry your own heart forward too.